Board meeting to order. Brian, would you lead us on a pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. Save my knuckles. Okay. All right. The first order of business will be to approve minutes from the February 25th, 2019 work session.
I move that we accept those minutes as written.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The February 25th, 2019 non-public work session minute meetings. Meeting minutes, I'm sorry.
I move that we accept those minutes as written.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And approve the February 25th, 2019 regular meeting minutes. Have a motion?
Make a motion, we accept the minutes, February 25th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excuse me just 1 minute. Oh, there we go. The Select Board will meet on the following dates. Work session meeting, 5 p.m. Monday, March 25th. Regular meeting will be 6 p.m. Monday, April the 8th, April the 22nd. Work sessions prior to the regular meeting will start at 5 p.m. Spring Fling is April 26th and 27th. Road bans for the town of Plymouth will be in effect from March 1st through May 1st, 2018. A list of roads can be located in the town hall and on the town's website. All of the above meetings will be held in the town hall unless otherwise posted. Citizens wishing to be listed on the Select Board's agenda should notify the town hall before 12 p.m. the Friday before the scheduled meeting. Alternate members are always needed to fill positions on the zoning and planning boards. If interested, please submit a letter of intent to the Plymouth Select Board's office, 6 Post Office Square, Plymouth, New Hampshire, 03264. The board is starting a new advisory budget committee and asked anyone with an interest in serving to submit a letter of intent to the Plymouth Select Board, Town of Plymouth, 6 Post Office Square, Plymouth, New Hampshire, 03264. Under Chairman's comments, I'd first like this opportunity to welcome a new Select Board member, Katharina Kelsey. Welcome aboard. Thank you for stepping up and serving. The Select Board wants to report the results of the past couple of weeks' elections and voting, which may and will affect the tax rate. As things stand right now, we are looking at an overall projected increase for the town of 46 cents, which was noted at the end of the budgets provided at the public hearing and the town meeting. As a result of the high school's public hearing and meeting, the high school is at a projected 68 cents increase, and as a result of the elementary school's public hearing and meeting, the elementary school is a projected $2.17 increase. The county is looking at a potential increase of between 5 and 8 cents. In an effort to continue the transparency, the board wants to make voters aware that the New Hampshire Electric Co-op has filed and has been pressing the town of Plymouth, along with many surrounding communities, for abatements on their assessed value for the poles, lines, and transmission equipment. To date, the town has been successful in holding off these appeals. However, the board is still waiting for final language from the town attorneys on Part 1 of these appeals, and there is also a proposed Part 2 legislation that could set a new precedence for these assessed values over the next few years, known as House Bill 700. Both of these could have a large increase on Plymouth's tax rate. The Select Board, when the tax rate is set in the fall for the 2019 tax year, will have to take into consideration any adjustment to these utility assessments, and are hoping that the increase in assessed value gained from development of the rest of the town will make up for the difference that is lost to these impacts from the New Hampshire Electric Co-op. If it cannot be made up this year, it is anticipated that the town's portion of the tax increase will be more than the proposed 46 cents that we had originally discussed. With 7 or 8 months left in the assessing process, it is still much too early for the Select Board to know how these numbers will shake out. We do know, however, that more entities, such as Market Basket and other future development on the Tenny Mountain Corridor, adding to the tax base will help lower the taxes. The board hopes over the next 7 or 8 months to sustain the tax rate as much as we can, and we will continue to update the public. Do any board members have any comments? Seeing none. Do we have any correspondence? Nothing. Okay, appointments, yes. We have visitor, Chris Buckley.
Should I go up to the...
Yes, please, if you would, state your name and...
Chris Buckley from Plymouth. Thank you for letting me take up hopefully a little bit of your time. If you have questions, I could give more details, but there's 2 developments that are sort of connected in Plymouth that I think that the board should know about. And some of you already know about one of them. The first one is the Oxbow Initiative. That's what we're calling it. And it sort of it really started in Holderness. And right now, the part that is most active is in Holderness, but there is a chunk of the area we're interested in that's also in Plymouth. The area we're talking about is south of Holderness Road, east of the interstate, west of the river, if that makes sense, from Holderness Road all the way down to the golf course. We've actually talked to Phil Friel, the golf course owner, who is very supportive and interested in what we're doing. There's 3 conservation commissions, 2 now, because Ashland kind of doesn't have a conservation commission at the moment. They don't have a quorum. They only have 2 people. And a lot of moving parts because there's a lot of other entities involved. The university, Holderness School, Holderness Conservation Commission owns a piece of property down there, manages a piece of property down there. There's the golf course guy. So, and there's also a big chunk of that, even though it's on the other side of the river, that actually is Plymouth. And that's because the river jumped its channel years ago. I believe some of that, including Secret Beach, the so-called Secret Beach, is owned by the golf course, the Secret Beach part, but a big chunk of that is owned by the Plymouth Athletic Committee, I think is what they're called. And I've talked to their lawyers. and they didn't know much about it. I don't know why they ended up with this property, but they have it. In any event, that area is, it's kind of one of those areas, it's not, you really can't develop down there. There's an active snowmobile corridor, which is kind of important to the town. There's a maze of now official mountain bike trails that the local mountain bike community has worked out with the owners to maintain, and so they're totally legitimate. And then, people use that place for bird watching and walking their dogs. So it's kind of a valuable asset to the three towns, but particularly to Plymouth, because it could, and our vision is to make it sort of like an urban park. We've worked for years to keep automobiles out of there. Sometimes successfully. Every time we think we have them closed out, there's a way to sneak around there. And the problem with automobiles going down there is that's the bulk, the giant partying that goes down on Secret Beach is possible because of vehicles. A lot of people walk down there anyway. And that's something that we hope to be able to monitor somewhat, because I think that's a potential problem. It's a giant party place for the college, but, it can sort of continue to be that way in the summer. So that could be a potential headache for the town that we could hopefully take off your plates. The access road would be gated, but emergency vehicles would have keys. The Irving Station owns a lot of property that back there. We're in talks with them. So anyway, what we're working on right at this moment is to get hopefully easements from the Holderness property owners. And we're trying to get everyone together. So that's, kind of a brief description of the first thing we're working on. If you have any questions about that, because the other thing may be a little more exciting, possibly. So anyway, yeah, Paul.
Second thing, Chris, is it still the same area that you're going to talk about?
It partly is the same area, but because of the mountain bike trail network down there, which is called the Gyroscope, it's very popular in the statewide and out of the state.
This is the reason why I'm in support of Chris, and I don't want to speak for the chiefs. I think this would lead to better access for us to, we have to go down there a lot, and we don't really have good access to get there as first responders. And I believe the development that Chris is talking about in part one, at least will definitely make that more accessible for the town.
And we have met with all the chiefs of police, including the university chief, Steve Temporino. All the chiefs got together with us. We met once. So they know the other thing that's going on down there is a lot of people like to use that because the trails are handy to town, but it's actually starting to get sketchy. There's people in the summer living down there. There was I got a call last summer, I think, from someone from the sewer plant that could see, people tenting across the way. And I went down there, I saw the camp, but I never saw people down there, but clearly people were living there. So, there's, and people get uncomfortable going down there because of that. And when I first moved here in the 70s, that area was beautiful. And I've watched it over the years get sort of beaten on because there's no real ownership. It's one of those no man's land type of thing that, it sort of falls between the cracks. So sort of anything goes down there, and it could be an incredible asset to, the whole area, but particularly to Plymouth. Even though a lot of it isn't in Plymouth, the access from downtown Plymouth, it's like an urban park, basically.
And I would believe that most of the people in Plymouth don't realize that we do have ownership across the river.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, across the interstate too, there's a little chunk of Plymouth.
Right, in one spot we do.
Yeah. So that was the first part. The second part, and I think this may be, as an economic driver, this may be of a little bit more interest, and it has to do with mountain biking, oddly enough. And I'm not talking about an economic driver that's going to save Plymouth and make our tax rate go way down, but as far as economic diversity, there's all these mountain bike developments that are happening in Plymouth right now. One is Green Woodlands up in Dorchester, Lyme. The guy who owns that He has a bunch of Nordic ski trails, but he's very accommodating right now, and he's got the money to do it. He's got machinery in there. He's making all these mountain bike trails. There's a bunch of double track, which is like dirt gravel roads, but there's also, he's actually building these incredible single track trails. And I gotta say, I'm not a mountain biker. You know, I like using their trails. They make incredible trails because they have to be up to a certain standard. But you know, I don't have that sort of skin in the game. I'm not, that's not why I'm talking about this. There's that, Smarts Brook on the White Mountain National Forest has for years had sort of bootleg mountain bike trails, this giant network that now is officially being adopted by the White Mountain National Forest and will be maintained by the local mountain bike chapter. Franklin Falls has a network of trails down there. And most importantly, north of us, and Plymouth is a core, you know, people pass right through Plymouth to get to the Kingdom Trails in Burke, Vermont. If you're not familiar with what's happened, especially in East Burke, mountain biking has basically saved that community. I've never read any negative article you constantly read things about Burke, Vermont, and how they've sort of adopted the mountain bike community. They've put in all these trails. They work with the landowners. You know, it brings in a lot of money, and there's very little, you know, downside the way there might be with some motorized vehicle, which, you know, kind of recreation that is an incredible economic boom, but, you know, there's some, you know, negatives, like you can see what's going on like in Gorham and those areas right now. I've never read anything negative about the mountain bikers. And the reason I mention this is because of that, for a couple of reasons, but one is in somewhere we adopted that, I guess it's like I don't know if it's a resolution of being an eco-tourism destination. This would fit the bill perfectly. That's exactly the type of thing we're talking about. And we have a very active local mountain bike organization, NEMBA, right now, who I'm sure would be happy to come in and talk to you guys about everything they're doing. They have regular meetings. They're meeting in the Enterprise Center once a month. They make incredible trails. They monitor their trails. They're sort of reining in people. They're making bootleg trails, which has kind of been the case around Plymouth. You know, people just go on, you know, other people's property and start making trails. You know, they're sort of getting that under control and some of the weirder features that younger mountain bikes like to make. So you know, it's like I said, it's not going to be some giant economic boom, but you know, it could potentially, if we captured, because we're sort of a gateway to all these different places, Plymouth could position itself, and NEMBA would like to do this, as a place that people come and stop and eat and stay on the way to all these other mountain biking destinations. So I just thought that would be something to get on your radar, so you knew what was happening, and if you wanted to know more, I would definitely say go to Burke, Vermont's, like the Kingdom Trails website, and just see how excited that little community is about having the mountain bikers up there. So that's it.
Is the Conservation Commission focused on this as well, or are you going rogue?
No, well, this is just as a citizen. The mountain bike, the Plymouth Conservation Commission is somewhat, they're coming around a little bit, but they're a little anti-mountain bikes, mostly because they don't really, you know, it's kind of foreign to them. And, you know, honestly, I know a lot of mountain bikers, and I ride a road bike, and I do, you know, my kids mountain bike, so I know a little bit more about it. And certainly there's very inappropriate places for mountain bikes, but those places are inappropriate for a reason, like the Walter Newton waterfall. People might try to ride in there, or Plymouth Mountain, they'll do it once and realize, oh, this is unrideable. You know, so, and the local mountain bike community has been very cooperative, working with the Conservation Commission. You know, if they say there's a place, the people are riding, they don't want them to ride there. It's been taken care of. Okay. We have a public comment question.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. So just to be clear, this development is both relating to making Plymouth a spot for mountain biking, as well as a nice, hospitable spot to wait when going to a more popular mountain biking trail like the one in Vermont.
Yeah, I think that's it. You know, because we probably don't have we do have a lot of mountain bike trails, including Fox Park right now, with the Parks and Rec Department has designated some mountain bike trails out there. We have the pump track down at the skateboard park, which is a mountain bike feature. So, but, probably we're never going to be like the Kingdom Trails, but with all these other little places around, you get out to Dorchester, there's not like a lot of places to stay out there, not a lot of places to eat out there. A lot of people are going to be passing through Plymouth and getting off the interstate to get over to these Green Woodlands trails. So we're pretty well positioned, to capture some of that.
Bill?
Just 1 second, Chair.
Okay, Paul.
I need you to identify yourself for the record, that's all.
Oh, sorry, my name is Thomas Santori.
Thank you.
So I was just wondering about, so how are you going to tie in Green Woodlands, or what's the intent to tie in Green Woodlands? Just,
Only that it exists and that, Plymouth is a good jumping off point. I guess just what I said is, there's really not any place, there's no accommodations out in Dorchester, really. There's, the Acres is kind of capitalizing on it and has actually connected their trail system with the Green Woodlands Trail System. And if you've never been up there, you should go check it out, because it's beautiful. There's, Cummings Pond is out there and all these other ponds and wetlands. It's a pretty sizable area. Actively logged, but with, these trails in mind. So, everything sort of coexists together. And the skiing up there, the cross-country skiing is incredible too. And they have groomers, like state-of-the-art groomers they just bought. And the guys putting in the money, making all this stuff.
Mike?
So Chris, the Business and Economic Development Committee that met for a couple of months, a bunch of meetings, did identify bike trails for their economic plan, and would be one of the goals, I don't know how attainable it will be, would be to connect some sort of trails from downtown to Tenny Mountain Highway, the swimming spot under the bridge. And would that be enough to then hook into any other trail system if we could get that established?
Absolutely, and the more those kind of little connectors that probably like NEMBA would be the best people to talk to about that, because what exists now, like I said, I'm not a mountain biker, but a lot of that could be road connectivity too, some of the quieter roads. A great, it's too bad, I think about this, and with the planning board, that we couldn't take like field trips, like the planning board couldn't take a field trip. And one of the places I'd like to go bring the whole planning board is to the eastern townships in Quebec and see what they, the connectivity with agriculture and recreation and restaurants and everything up there. There are little towns like Plymouth, sometimes even smaller, but what they've done up there is just very cool, very, very enjoyable and aesthetic, it's an economic boom.
Very good.
It's on the radar.
It's and I figured it was, and I also was thinking I should talk to that economic committee also. At one point, I don't know if it's full, but that would be something I'd almost be interested to participate in. But I certainly would, direct NEMBA to that committee if they.
Well, they had a limited role. We met what our.
Oh, it's okay.
So we met what we were tasked to do, and it's morphed into a Main Street committee. And then it's, the other half of it is to work on some projects that they identified, which will need different skill sets. So as the project is developed, the skill set will be assembled for that project. So they did their task.
We could invite, there's a gentleman I know who's part of NEMBA, who has mentioned this to me offhandedly, and we can invite him in to speak.
That'd be great.
Yeah. To get those questions answered for us.
Yeah, yep.
It'd be great to have Plymouth part of that whole trail system.
Paul?
Yeah. Mr. Chair and Chris, do you remember Miriam Bader? She was a planner.
What was her name again?
Miriam Bader,
I don't.
going back about 10 years, Kathy.
Probably.
When you came,
She did a huge study on this. She secured a $385,000 grant that was rejected after we had won it.
Ooh, yeah.
So I'm going to give her a call. She's down in DC now, and she's a planner in DC, and see how much of that information she still has, and where it might even be filed electronically here at the town hall. A lot of mapping on a bike path, and it was going to go all the way to Holderness, to Ashland. So,
Bill?
I'll look
You know,
up-
talking about like funding though, I was just thinking, we met with, actually Annie Custer's staff. I was more focused on something that's related to like a campaign, but, they were talking about like, chances for funding through Northern Borders. And Northern Borders has funded, like bike paths and in addition to housing and all sorts of things, but, there would be a source.
And that could be, I remember tasking her to look for a grant for her idea, and she found one.
wow,
So I'll contact her also.
And I think,
She's handling this at a federal level now, so that could be even.
Oh, wow.
yeah,
We get a tunnel for Tenny Mountain Highway.
Contact the Air Force about that.
Okay.
Or crossing. Any other comments, or? Chris, thank you very much.
you're welcome. Thanks for letting me.
Yeah. And maybe get with what are the next plans for the Economic Development Group to
well,
meet?
it's really got to go in front of this board to figure out, I'm guessing, where this board would like to take it and what projects they want to try and undertake and where we want to put emphasis in, because we won't be able to handle everything that's in there. So it's really up to this board to have a discussion on it.
Or they might be able to get some subgroups going to handle multiple problems, just like we're working on the planning board. People taking different areas, taking that responsibility and seeing it through. So, thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate it. Okay, committee reports? Paul?
I guess we'll finish with the committee reports that are outstanding, and then you have to start picking new committee members.
Okay. Do we want to do that after the meeting, or?
No, you have to do it now. You have to.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay,
So if there are any outstanding committee reports from anybody?
I was going to mention a couple things. So, the Business Economic and Development Committee that morphed into a Main Street committee, we're looking to see if we can get a committee established. We met here at Town Hall last week. We probably had 15 businesses along Main Street or the village that were in attendance. We talked, and I figured a good part of the conversation would talk about parking, and another percentage of the meeting would talk about promoting the downtown businesses to bring in people. And 99.9% of the discussion was about parking. And they were very clear that when we might have talked about shop local, they brought the conversation back to parking. And they said people will drive around twice, not find a parking space, and go to another community to do their shopping. And they said that needs to stop. And they realize, some of them are paying a good amount of money for taxes, and they're missing out on business that they have staff there ready to handle, but because the parking is an issue, they really need that solved. So, in talking with Brian, we've identified, and Frank Miller, we have identified 3 locations that we believe we can add enough parking for a short-term solution and possibly a longer-term solution to handle that problem. And they seemed extremely receptive to the locations that we picked. The first location would be a very short-term fix that could stay on, but it's the location where the snow piles are now. If we could move the snow piles for next winter. And as soon as the snow is melted, go in with metal detectors, pull out any nails, and then get some crush bank run, level it off, and make some spray painted lines. I think we established that we could fit possibly as little as 30, roughly 30 to 40 parking spots just down there, and it would be for employee parking. So instead of 25 to 30 employees of all those Main Street parking in the downtown village, they're taking up spots that potential customers. And so they, rather than having to come out every hour to feed the meter, we would have them walking from down where the snow piles are. So that was one of the solutions. The second solution still involves something that I've mentioned a couple times, is the Plymouth Inn property. And it's up for this board to talk about that location if we want to pursue it, find some costs, what it would cost to do, whether there's an all-out, trying to fit 24 spots there, or whether we could spend very little and gain 20 spots maybe, or 15 spots. That would help the South Main Street. And then we identified a third location on North Main Street across from the barber shop. And in that location, the cars are parking one after the other along the road. And the road is much wider there. And along that area, there is a sidewalk. And we felt that if we could eliminate and go to diagonal parking in that spot, possibly take the sidewalk and move it to the other side of the 3 trees, if it's still within our right-of-way, that we could add a number of spots, probably an extra spot for every parallel spot that's there. So those are the 3, and the downtown businesses seem very happy with that. If we can, and they realize, we may not get all of it, but whatever we think, and they also know it depends on a few things money-wise and whether we can actually fit those diagonal cars in there. But they know that the town is supportive and we are empathetic to the situation. So Brian is leading that effort. He's doing a great job, and we're going to be having hopefully some more meetings to talk about the parking problem. We also are, the packets that I passed out 2 meetings ago, Bill got one the other day, that talk about some of the projects, which the bike paths from downtown to Tenny Mountain Highway was discussed, and hopefully there were 3 or 4. Some of them would cost some money to do, some would cost no money to do. And if we can have the board look at those and determine what we want to tackle now versus later, that would be great. So.
Anything, did you want to mention something about the?
Oh, right. So John and we met with, I had met about a month ago with Dr. Lee from the university, who was working with the middle school students, I believe 5th through 8th grade, with coding and getting statistics to show, to give information to a business owner on questions that they have about either gaining more business or what they need to concentrate on. And his group would use this program that they know how to code to pull the information out for statewide, local-wide, maybe even nationally wide. So my question was economic development for Plymouth. What is the workforce? What is their education? What should businesses that are thinking of coming to Plymouth, why would they come to Plymouth, based on information that you can pull out? And they did a great job. John came with me, and they did a super job presenting. I've been watching this process. This is my 3rd time attending Daniel Lee's presentation with the kids, and I've seen a lot of growth with the kids in doing, and they've just gotten more and more professional. I was so impressed with them the other night. So one thing that they identified, which I thought was extremely interesting, was how Plymouth, we identified in this business and economic development plan, is the history of Plymouth is an agriculture community. We didn't have all these mills like some other communities like Franklin. We had agriculture. That was the basis. And that's why you see a good portion of Plymouth have an agricultural zone. It's our history. It's what makes us different from other communities. And one item that they pulled out of this agricultural statistics was that Plymouth, more than twice the state average, had fishing, agriculture, and lumber as skill sets that our population had. So I found that was pretty interesting. There was a lot more, I've got to look at it, but they did a great, John, I don't know if you want to add anything. You took more notes than I did.
No,
Okay.
no. It was, like I say, they did a great job, and the kids got in there and did their presentation, and it's a real neat system, and there's a lot of information that they can get. And Dr. Lee was talking about, as far as the economic development for the town, that he could use some of his students to come up with some of this information and formalize it into a nice presentation package for businesses that would like to come to Plymouth. You know, so we said we would follow up on that and see what we can do. So that was very good. Bill?
I'll be brief, but so I'm the chair of the Pymatuwasset River Local Advisory Committee, and we've been awarded through Lakes Region Planning Commission a grant for mapping the development of a local groundwater aquifer protection ordinance. So ultimately, we'll be working with the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Water and Sewer District to at least make them apprised of the mapping that's going to go on. Anyway, that's it.
Brian?
I attended the annual meeting for Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, and they stated that the only major project they are have in the works is the exploration of a new water source for Plymouth in the Lower Holderness Field area. And that's all they have currently on the docket.
Just
That was at the annual meeting.
Just a point of interest regarding the water source. So they contacted PERLAC
Oh, there we go.
in order to have us sign off on their intent to do a 48-hour purge of the wells. There are 2 wells over at the back of the Holderness Athletic Field, Holderness School Athletic Fields. And those are going to be like having a 48-hour test where they're just going to void both wells at 300 feet, 300 gallons per minute. And then they're going to void it on top of the ice flow on the Pemmy River. And ultimately they're going to do, I think, a week, test as well down the pike. But the company that's doing the evaluation said the water quality is excellent, and there's no sodium, which on the other side of the river there is, downstream of 93. So, anyway.
Okay.
Excuse me, Brian.
All?
Anything mentioned about Main Street being closed this summer?
Not a thing.
And we asked them, and they put the camera, and we had it on them, and there was going to be nothing done this year.
Was that stated?
That was stated. It was on the camera. Because we wanted to get a commitment, and again, the only project was the development of the water source in Holderness, and we asked them specifically, is Main Street going to be affected? Is there going to be any work, any diggings? And they said no. And then one of the members qualified the fact, unless there is a break or something like that. But there's no planned construction or anything else this year. And I did inform them of the fact that the state was going to be asphalting 3, and they had no comment. So, okay, we want to get around to committee assignments.
Yes. The first one is for Plymouth Village Water and Sewer.
Currently, it's.
Brian and I were assigned to that initially, so.
You want to continue, or?
Yeah.
No, you're good.
They're good.
I'll stay on that.
So both of you still?
No, Brian is,
Brian's
gonna stick,
taking over.
but
Okay.
All right,
Second
planning,
was Planning board?
I'd like to volunteer for
all
that.
right. So Bill,
Alternate planning board?
I'd stay on or go back to alternate, whatever I was.
okay.
Chamber of Commerce was Mike Ahern.
And that's crossed out,
Yeah.
correct?
Is that official now?
I think we,
Okay. As a board
yeah.
decided. Campus Community Council was John and Brian.
I'll stay on that. John?
I'll also stay on that.
There's also kind of like something, a task force that was initiated between the off-campus housing community and PSU in general, and they asked for a select board rep, and I volunteered to serve on that. And there's not really a name for it. They just did so.
Okay,
Plymouth School Board District. John was on that.
That was me the past year.
yeah, Mike, I don't know why they had my name down, because Mike was doing that.
I just assume not do it, but I think that'd be a good opportunity for,
Kathy, you don't have to take anything this round.
That is, I wish we could get to more meetings, however, they always seem to fall
yeah,
on the
they,
same night.
I'd missed the last 2 or 3 meetings because I've been here for extra meetings, but I'd stay on it. It's not a lot of, I'd do it still.
Okay, Mike?
Ambulance Committee. That's going to continue with Ann. And it was John and Mike with, going to need at least one selectman. We don't need 2 any longer.
I'll stay on it.
Energy Committee.
Oh, conservation.
I'm getting you.
I think
Oh.
energy's done.
Energy, huh?
They're
right,
different now.
Oh,
We'll still
they
pick
got a
somebody.
different,
Don't know if we're going to restart it.
wait a minute.
I'll leave you down there for now, Bill, and
Oh.
we'll see where that goes.
Actually,
Conservation Commission.
Energy Committee isn't even on the new one, I guess.
Right.
but-
Yeah, that's missing.
So until they resume that, yeah, I'd stay on that, but
Well, we do have a couple of past members that are questioning, so we can stay in touch with them. Still, that seems their biggest thing, wanting to know what the status of the light poles are and everything, and that's still in limbo with the co-op,
right.
for many reasons, though. Conservation Commission was Val.
I was gonna volunteer for that. Yes,
You got it.
Thank you.
Capital Improvement Budget Committee.
I'll stay on that.
PROAC.
Kathy, if there's anything you see in there that you'd like to get involved in, feel free. Because some of them, we can have 2 people, and that way you can,
So the other thing about PERLAC, yeah, it's not, I mean, so I'm chair of PERLAC, but I could have a meeting in Bristol. I wouldn't expect like a select board member to go down there, but, so I can report back to the board regardless.
We'll leave it that way. This is an important one. Lakes Region Planning Commission. It was Bill and Val.
We never been to a meeting.
Right, staff's been covering.
What's that?
Staff has been covering.
Oh, okay.
Brian,
We
Yeah.
did send in Brian, and it was Ally before Brian.
I'll get on that with Bill.
It's more for you to oversee it, and because it's during the day, and so I can send staff, continue to send staff. especially Brian, because it's more of a planning
Right.
board type of thing. Well, I thought we were going to be able to eliminate this, but Northern Pass reps.
Was it me and Bill?
It was, yeah.
I'd continue to stay informed on it with you.
Yeah, I'm getting,
Seems to be getting a little active again.
yeah.
What do you think, Bill?
Do you want to be on that?
Yeah, sure, that'd be great. I understand that.
Park and Recs Commission was Brian.
Yeah, I'll stay.
You should have an office down there by now.
I do.
Economic Development Committee, Mike Ahern.
Yep.
Advisory Budget Committee.
Used to be Val. Oh, did you volunteer?
She said she's interested.
I do have written on here, I don't know if it's Main Street Committee rep. I don't know where that's going now, Mike. It seems more like a parking committee.
Yeah, it does. They want the parking issue
Yeah.
done before they establish a committee.
I think we should probably restart the parking committee so we can have more official action. At least, it's better that way for a selectman to be tasked with a committee and for them to go off on their own.
I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Just don't want, you want to go to that?
I want to go to the parking committee and still continue to work with economic development.
Doing a great job, by the way, Mike.
Can any of you think of a new committee that might be needed?
Thank you, John.
No.
That's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Public comments on items discussed tonight. Do we have any?
Actually, one, with Mike Ahern on this parallel diagonal parking versus the parallel parking in front of Silver Hall. We don't need to construct.
Frank, could you come up to the podium so the people can hear?
The preliminary design of our diagonal parking versus our parallel in front of Silver Hall. There was an accident here a day or two ago. Someone already blazed the trail in as diagonal parking. But one of the question was, in order to put there's plenty of room to put in diagonal parking without hurting the trees. And the question was about the sidewalk. And the sidewalk can be designated by the painting two white lines, 6 to 8 inch wide lines. It would reflect what we have down on South Main Street at the printers where they have nose-in parking. You drive over the sidewalk, nose in. Napa store has it, the Quick Check has it, 35 Main Street has it. There's no sidewalk per se other than the two lines. And that's all what we'd really need to do to reaccomplish that. The only thing that it needs to be officially evaluated would be the appropriate drainage design. And the other big thing that we had on this parking issue was going to kiosk and then raising our amount to $1 an hour. We're currently at 25%, which is so 1950. We need to raise the amount is normally you go to other towns and cities that are all $1 an hour. And that money obviously would help us fund the law enforcement, the enforcement of parking, the system itself, purchasing the equipment, maintaining it, as well as provide the future funds for other parking lot construction. So, but in reviewing that area and what we have currently designed on our main street, what we really need to do is start to paint our lines that says it's a sidewalk on both sides of Main Street.
if it's not on an actual raised sidewalk system. So there's a lot of incompletes that we have on Main Street, and that's one of the things I think would help us with a specific parking design plan. And then the other thing is, once people park a car, they're a pedestrian, and we need to complete our sidewalk system to get them safely to where they want to go.
Frank,
Yes.
didn't you work, wasn't there a few years ago? that
Yeah,
you
I did the inventory. I'm going to reaccomplish it here when the snow melts away. I'm going to inventory all of the businesses, the types of businesses we have on Main Street, and all of the existing parking that I can see and identify, and then put that on the map. I know the police department has a map of all of the downtown and the metered spots. We need to re-inventory, get our baseline of what we have, the way we have it, and then look to see where our opportunities are to enhance and go after. Our biggest thing is employee parking. Because we have, right now, as I've counted, 115 businesses on Main Street, and that's 330 cars that come to work with no customers. And there's only 250 spaces or so for the employees. So right off, we're at a deficit as we stand. So,
Paul?
I agree with what's being said about the parking. You have to be very careful what you're saying about the sidewalks. We've got burnt really bad in the past. We don't own all the sidewalks. Nobody complains about us plowing them all, but we don't own them all. So,
On South Main Street, you're mostly talking about?
What do you think about in front of
Well-
Silver?
and the campus,
Yeah.
yes.
issue owns that.
And here's the other issue that we need to, as far as the safety. Route 3, obviously, is not a parallel road. We have several places where it's less than the normal 4 rods, okay? And there've been various upgrades, and I think the last one was 1929-30, which the state took the 66-foot right-of-way. However, before that, landowners owned up to more, so that they couldn't do that. We have, like, the Plymouth Insight is an offset of 6 foot. So part of our enhancing of getting those diagonal parkings, just digging into the embankment, we could straighten that bottleneck out, okay? The parts down by the old restaurant across from Rite Aid, that was an incomplete, so the Route 3 comes into town, and it's a bottleneck there. The sidewalk ends at right 7 Main Street, South Main Street. So there's a lot of incompletes, and you're very correct that a lot of it needs to be resurveyed, but that's an item that you would put down as far as the inventory. So when I did the inventory, I was using the town's tax map as a thing to get the plot plan on, but that's not a surveyed deed element. And this is where you need to get an inventory and then establish the priorities of things that we can do with things that we know, like the town owns the Plymouth Insight. We've already been granted a 30-foot right-of-way from Gould Terrace going north, but there's other owners, and we need to then look at it to see how we can address accomplishing the parking there, along with ensuring that we don't do any unintended consequences of something we wish we hadn't done.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Is there an estimate on how many spaces could be gained hypothetically with diagonal parking as far as, parallel to the road? Right here,
But again, before we get into that,
I know, hypothetically speaking about the sidewalks, right?
Well,
the state owns
yes.
Main Street.
So you have,
Yeah,
the thing is, before we get into counting your spots, we have four regulatory processes: Code of Federal Regulations, state RSAs, municipal ordinances, and the ISs, industry standards. And you have to, that's why it is so important that things go through the town administrator, because we may be not mindful of understanding what the Code of Federal Regulations state about parking systems and design that affect how we state RSAs are and how they are obligated in their authority having jurisdiction to regulate designs of conflicts, intersections, parking, and so on, and maintaining the road. So we really need to do the inventory of what we have, the way we have it, and then start to look at all of those reference elements before we start to carve it up.
I can tell you this, Brian, if we can take 2 parallel parking spaces, the bigger ones, we can get up to 3 to 4 parking spaces.
Yeah, just hypothetically speaking.
Yes.
About 3 to 4 for every 2.
Right.
And again, we own enough space to be able to parallel park. The state owns the center of the road. In many places, diagonal encroaches into the state. Which
Okay,
is-
thank you very much, Frank.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Frank. What were you going to say, Paul?
No, we're a little off subject. No, we had agreed to try to stay on subject going forward, and I'll put this on the agenda for discussion at the next meeting. There could be people that would like to discuss this and didn't
Okay.
get a chance to be here tonight.
All right.
I want to just try to stay on subject. We'll put it on the next agenda in 2 weeks.
Okay. All right, we need to go into non-public.
Yes, personnel.
We have a motion to go into non-public in accordance with RSA 91-A:3, 2, A through I.
So moved.
Second.
All those